Hello, this is Norman Duhart, and now we want to look at managing our VSphere environment using the VSphere Web Client. Now we want to access our vCenter server using our VSphere Web Client. I have a shortcut on my desktop here, so I'll select that. And this will open up the web browser and allow us to access the vCenter server. Once the web page opens up, you'll notice down here in the bottom left, download the client integration plugin. You'll want to do this first. If you select this I, it'll give you some additional information on the plugin. If you want to deploy OVF templates, attach devices from a client computer to a virtual machine. If you want to run the virtual machine console from within the web browser. And if you want to use your Windows session credentials, you'll have to have this plugin installed. So you can select this particular link here, download the client configuration plugin, and you'll download this and then you can install it. Once you begin the install, you'll have to close all your browser windows. You can save the file. This will download it. Then you close your browser and install the plugin. Now I downloaded it already, so I'm just going to run the install here and then reopen the browser. I select Finish, and then go back to the VSphere Web Client, and you'll notice here the link to the client integration plugin is no longer available. Now to log in, by default you'll use administrator@vsphere.local. And add your password. Here we have the home page for the vCenter server. First thing we want to do is we want to go to Administration, Configuration, Identity Sources, and we want to add our Active Directory domain as an identity source. This way we can use users and groups from our Active Directory domain to manage our vSphere environment. So we select the green plus sign to add an identity source. We select the Active Directory Integrated Authentication. Here our domain shows up test.net. We'll just select OK here. And now you can see test.net has been added as an identity source. The next thing we want to do is we want to make this our default domain. So you go here to this little world icon here and select to set this as our default domain. It gives you a warning message. And you can watch the progress where that has happened very quickly. Next we want to go to Users and Groups. We'll select test.net. We'll go to Groups. For the Administrators group, the group that has permissions to manage our vSphere environment, we go to Group Members. And then here for the domain, we don't want vSphere local, we want our Active Directory domain, so we'll select test.net. You can select users first, show groups first, or sort alphabetically. We want to show groups first. And then we will scroll down till we find the particular group we want to add to the administrators group. Now in my case, I've created a group in the domain called vCenter Admins, and I put in the users that I want to have permissions to manage the vSphere environment. So I select vCenter Admins. You can also check those names to verify that they are valid. The following names are correct. Okay, so now I've added the vCenter Admins group to the list of groups that have permissions to manage the vSphere environment. You can see that here. I'm going to go back to vCenter, vCenter Servers, And here's our vCenter server, vcenter.test.net. I'm going to go to Manage, Permissions, and here I'm going to add the group from the Active Directory that I want to have permissions to manage this vCenter server. So I'll select the plus mark again, select to add. You can see here vcenter.test.net. I want to go to the drop down and go to Test. This is our Active Directory domain. Show groups first. And we'll just scroll down to our vCenter admins. Check the names. Select OK. Now you can see the vCenter admins group has been added to the list of user groups, but their role is no access. So what we want to do then is use the drop down, select administrator, and you want to be sure this check mark propagate to children is enabled. And then select OK. And now our vCenter admins from the test domain has administrative privileges to the vCenter server and all the objects in the vCenter inventory. Since we have our client integration plugin and we have the correct groups with permissions, we're going to log off here. And then we're going to log back in using our Windows session credentials. So rather than using the vSphere.local administrator, we're going to use our Windows session credentials. So use Windows session authentication, select the check mark, log in. Now we are logged in with our Windows credentials. So we'll go to vCenter. Here we have our vCenter server. We're on our vCenter server. And the first thing we want to do now is we want to create a data center. So I can select this link, create a data center. And we'll call our data center Test Data Center. And select OK. Now we want to add a host to the data center. So we select Add a Host. We'll put in our host name. The location is the test data center. Select Next. The username and password for the host. Enter. Security warnings for the certificate. Select Next. You can assign a license at this particular point here. We'll assign this one. If we wanted to enable lockdown mode, we could do that. Enable lockdown mode prevents remote users from logging directly into this host. The host will only be accessible through local console or authorized centralized management application. We don't want lockdown mode. So select Next. And now you can get a summary of the information and select Finish. ESXi 5-1.test.net has been added as a host in this vCenter inventory. Let's add another host. So I'm going to go back to our test data center. And I'm going to select to add a host. And I'll add another host here. Select Next. Username and password. Next. security alert, next, assign a license, next, you don't want lockdown mode, next, next, and finish. Our progress window here. Okay, so now we have two hosts in this vCenter environment, ESXi5-1 and ESXi5-2.